In my head, there is this voice that keeps telling me that no matter how much I do, it's never going to be enough. So there's got to be some kind of superhuman feat for me to achieve my goals. And when I tell this voice that I don't have goals, that I do not dream of anything anymore, it tells me that something is wrong with me. If you have a voice like this that keeps telling you that you're worthless, you should examine many aspects of our society and think, how does our economic system contribute to our well-being, and how can it possibly create voices like this in our collective minds? So I used to think that I myself was responsible for what happens to me and my life. I used to put much emphasis on individual achievement. I used to be proud of what I did and what I accomplished. And mind you, I still feel accomplished in many ways. I still feel proud about many things I did. However, one thing kept popping in my mind. And the thing was, think about all the people who helped you achieve whatever it is you have. Think about your parents, your partner, your friends, people who raised you, people who helped educate you, people who helped provide for you. What about these people's achievements? Then, if you expand on that thought, if you think about all the resources that you have consumed that were created by someone else, you start to realize that this illusion of individual achievement is gradually dissipating. You realize just how many people in other forces might have been at work together with you to get you where you are. And this goes in the other direction as well. If you feel like you have failed in many areas of your life, think about all of the contributing factors, all of the other people that may have done something to influence this occurrence. Think about all of the resources that you might have been lacking in your journey, and think about what you could have done to change that. Maybe you could have changed everything very drastically, or maybe not. Maybe you didn't have much choice but to do what you had to do. And as you keep on thinking about this process, about all of the people and all of the outside influences that have made you who you are, you start losing faith in the individualist worldview. You start seeing just how delicately everything is intertwined in our world. You start seeing how your individual efforts might be absolutely futile if it's not for the support of the others. And you might start appreciating some of the support more, but you can also experience frustration that there's so many things outside of your control you wish were different. As you keep thinking about this, you realize that meritocracy does not exist. The people who you might admire and look up to may be doing great, not only because of all the efforts they put in, but also because of the privileges they were handed just because. So thinking about these people and their privileges may make you uncomfortable. They may even make you angry. And this is the beginning of the process when you realize that the world is not just, and you do not receive according to what you do. You receive some of the things due to luck, other things due to certain set of privileges, and yet some things seem to be carefully calculated and given to you as if you were a part of a bigger whole which you might not have chosen to be a part of. So if you keep thinking about that, if you keep going through all this frustration and anger and the sense of injustice, you may develop class consciousness. And class consciousness is a phenomenon described in great detail in many great works. But very basically what it means is that people are very vastly different, and they do fall into different groups and categories. Naturally, there are many hierarchies among people depending on many factors, but in the modern world, class consciousness can be very primitively and simply divided into two major categories. The people who have access to the means of production and the people who don't. And you may know the names of these two categories, but honestly, at this point of history, it doesn't even matter what we call these two categories, these two separate groups of people. These two groups of people are continuously in a state of conflict. One group, they do not want to give up the rights to the means of production. They want to control the process fully themselves, and they may believe that they make better decisions for everyone else. And the second group may feel helpless, like they cannot change much. The group of us that doesn't have access to the means of production is the largest portion of the population. And we oftentimes feel completely useless and helpless. We feel isolated and separated from each other. We do not feel like we belong to this large group. However, we do. We're all united by this one factor, the fact that we cannot take full control of our life and experience actual freedom because we simply cannot create according to our ability, and we cannot receive according to our need. And you may have heard this phrase before, and some people say it has stigma attached to it. But if you keep on thinking, even in the simplest terms, you cannot deny that this is a great phrase to describe the struggle that we observe. And even if we ignore our own personal struggles, we cannot ignore the struggles of others. If we look at the people who experience poverty, for example, we often tend to blame the people who are in poverty for the conditions they live in. We say, oh, these people must have not worked hard enough. Oh, these people must have become addicts for this reason or another. Oh, these people weren't responsible enough, etc. However, if you think about how easy it is to slip into poverty, you begin to realize that it really is not a choice to be poor. Poverty is not due to personal flaws. Poverty is something that is created by the state of our society. And we cannot separate ourselves from those who we call poor. Many of us ourselves are 1 or 2 steps away from poverty. We may be healthy and working hard now, but what if we become sick? What if there is an emergency? What if something happens that undermines our ability to work? What's going to happen to us? Well, if we do not have a large safety net, we are going to become poor. And there isn't really much we can do about it. All we have to do is sit and hope that none of these things, none of these actual normal human things like disease and disaster happen to us. And when they do happen, we put in as much effort as we humanly can into helping ourselves and our loved ones, and we feel even more useless and even more worthless as we see how everything just slips through our fingers and we are unable at all to help. And just as I mentioned before, I used to be very individualistic, and I used to think that many things depended on myself, and many things depended on how hard I worked and how much effort I put into doing things and achieving things. And I was slapped in the face with the realization that I am nothing without the other people. And if you studied the Odyssey at school, you will see that this is not new, that people realized that they depended on each other greatly since the ancient times. If you look at any other epic from any other early civilizations, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, one of the earliest literary works found, you will see very similar patterns in there as well. Authors and artists throughout the world have been exploring these problems for centuries, but about 150 years ago or so, people of science have started looking into this as well, and they have realized that there is a distinct pattern to our human development. Realizing how much I depended on other people at first greatly scared me. It is a scary thought to realize that you are not the master of your own universe, at least not in a sense that many of us wish we were. But after some pondering, after some years of pondering, I have realized that there's nothing wrong in depending on the collective. There is nothing wrong in admitting that we people need each other. There is nothing wrong with helping people in need. There's nothing shameful about needing help. And as I kept on thinking about all of these aspects of my existence and the existence of others, I have come to realize how much was wrong with the world. And I started exploring more through literature and science. And you probably know what kind of science and literature I have come across. So the simplest thing that you can take away from this is that we humans are greatly dependent on each other, and that we cannot assume full responsibility for our own fate. And we have the power to change the conditions we live under. Together, we can change the world for the better for ourselves and others. The second thing that you can take away is that there are two major groups that are at conflict for the past few hundred years. And this is people who have access to the means of production and people who don't. And the vast majority of the modern people fall into the second category, and therefore they have limited opportunities and have limited control over their lives. And we, the second group, can actually do much. We can accomplish much together. And I am very interested in exploring all of the wonderful things we can do together.